Hello again, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of Inside Canes Recruiting, our periodic look at the Miami Hurricanes recruiting efforts. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport's.com, and here today with one purpose, and that is to tee up Mr. Stephen Wagner, our recruiting expert, who is going to fill you in on some of the recruitment that's going on with the Hurricanes, because there's way too much of it to talk about on one podcast. And listen, let's be honest. We want you to subscribe to our website. That's the only thing that makes everything that we do every single day possible. So you see the information at the bottom of your screen. If you're not a member at CaneSport.com, please head on over to our website, join our great community of fans. I promise you that you will not be sorry. Our whole team pounds it every single day to make you the most knowledgeable, entertained fans in the United States of America and beyond. So that out of the way, Stephen, let's get into recruiting, because I know I saw what looked like at least 100 kids coming through the gates of Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday, a lot of really big-time recruits. So I thought that I'd ask you about a few of them today, and I wanted to start out with a kid that was committed to Florida. His name is Marquez Daniel, and couldn't have been too thrilled by what he saw from the Gators on Saturday. They put up a little bit of a fight for a while. You know, kudos to them. I mean, honestly, they were playing without 3 defensive line starters. Miami was absolutely pummeling them at the line of scrimmage. But they hung in there, and it actually was a one-score game somehow, some way. It's amazing how things happen. But, you know, you have to punt a few times from the 40-yard line, and that will impact the number of points on the board. And I think Miami had to do it 3 times in the middle of that game, and just, you know, wasn't finishing drives. And you know, the Gator defense gets some credit for that. Those guys have some pretty good players over there. So here we are with Mr. Marquez Daniel. He is a commit to Florida. The Canes are working really hard to flip him. Saturday night could not have hurt. Stephen, give us an update there on what's up with Marquez Daniel.
Yeah, Miami is going all in on trying to flip this receiver from Florida. Now, Miami has made a very concerted effort, especially in this cycle and the last cycle, to try to get bigger along the perimeter with the types of receivers that they're going after. We've seen so far this year, you know, they went out and got Tyron Evans. He's listed at like 6'4". I think he might be closer to like the 6'4.5", maybe even 6'5" range. He's one of those really big physical bodies that's going to go up and win a lot of contested catches. Samorian Wingo is another really, really big body that they're bringing in along the perimeter. Marquez Daniel is listed 6'5.5". After having the chance to actually meet him on Saturday, I can tell you he absolutely looks every bit of 6'5.5". I believe that is a completely accurate listing. And he's one of those guys that they've really kind of zeroed in on. Miami is going to fight really hard to pull him away from the Gators. And I think that the Hurricanes are going to have a really good chance, because he told me after the game that he feels like Miami's his number 2, Auburn's his number 3. Florida, obviously, is still his number 1. But, I mean, come on, if we're just kind of reading the tea leaves here, Miami beat the crap out of Florida for the 2nd straight year. He was in attendance. Miami looks like they really do finally have this thing rolling. It feels like finally with this Hurricanes team, it feels like the hype it feels like the performance on the field has met the hype off the field. I mean, you know, that's apparent by their number 2 ranking in the AP poll. I am watching Marquez Daniel incredibly closely because I think that there's an excellent chance that he could be the 4th receiver addition in this year's class. We're going to be covering the crap out of him, but with the way that things are going in Miami and the way that things are going in Gainesville, especially with kind of the status of Billy Napier's hot seat right now, I think that I would definitely lean toward Miami. I think that we can all just sort of read the tea leaves there and kind of see where things are probably headed.
All right, there's no kid whose recruitment is hotter right now than defensive lineman Frederick Santias, and you guys have seen us writing about him. Those of you that are subscribers to our website have. Which is why everybody else needs to jump on board and be part of this train, because Frederick Santias is one of the guys that has emerged in the last few weeks as a priority for Miami. Believe it or not, he was committed to FAU. I mean, you know, wasn't, you know, getting a ton of Power 4 interest before the season began, was committed to FAU. He wanted a spot. he wanted to know he was going to college. Suddenly, Michigan State gets hot on him. Miami gets hot on him. Now, a bunch of others are jumping on board in recruiting him. He also was at the stadium this past weekend. Stephen, Miami seems like they're doing really well here. Your thoughts?
They are doing. You know what, Gary? I'm going to turn up my really-o meter here and say Miami is doing really, 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 really well for Frederick Santias.
What the hell? Give us one more, really.
Really well.
There we go. There's a fifth one.
You know what? That was enough reallys for me to formally enter a prediction for Miami to land this defensive tackle. I told our subscribers on Saturday night, as soon as I spoke with him after the game, I rushed upstairs to the press box and went ahead and put in a prediction for the Hurricanes to land Santias. I think that there's an excellent chance that he could be the next to commit to Miami in the 2026 cycle. Kind of having the chance to talk to him after the game. He's now visited Miami in back-to-back weeks. He was on Miami's campus Sunday as well, just kind of hanging around. He's receiving a very aggressive push from the entire Hurricane staff. He's another guy that, he's one of these surprises. Every fall there's always, one or two surprises that Miami, they probably weren't even on Miami's radar in the spring. Last year it was Kellen Wiley, the linebacker from Tampa Armwood. The year before that, it was Cole McConaughey, who was an edge committed to Louisville, who really just kind of came out of nowhere. This year, it looks like it's going to be Santias because you look at the quality of his film from the spring, and then you look at his senior tape. In the spring, he really wasn't showing anything that would make you think, yeah, this is a guy who definitely needs to be a Power 5 player. This fall, he has absolutely blown up, and a ton of Power 5 teams are really showing a lot of interest right now. The big three in Florida, Miami, Florida, Florida State, he's on all of their radars. The Gators are definitely trying to recruit him too. But right now, I love Miami's position for him. I'm leaning very heavily toward the Hurricanes right now. That's why I put in that prediction for him. Again, if you're a subscriber, you'll have seen that Saturday night on the message board, I posted and I told everyone, hey, right after this massive Florida win, I put in a prediction for Miami to land a target who has become incredibly, incredibly coveted. And someone on the message board asked, what's what's this going to do to Miami's defensive tackle situation? As far as how many tackles they're going to take in recruiting this year, because now they have Tyson Bacon, they've got Anthony Kennedy. I'm anticipating they'll be able to successfully add Frederick Santias. Where are we going to go from here? Miami still has room for D tackles in this class. They want to load up the trenches on both sides of the ball. Right now, they've got 6 offensive linemen committed. It would not stun me if Miami ends up getting 5 defensive tackles. Their theory is, man, especially with the 105, let's get as many of these really big, talented bodies in here all at once. We'll get really talented young D tackles going up against really talented young offensive linemen, iron sharpening iron, and eventually they're going to feel pretty good about the product that they're putting on the field in the trenches.
Yeah, and Steven's not lying, man. He was full sprint up to the press box. He was huffing and puffing when he came to his seat. I'm like, damn, Steve, you okay? I hope you're not, having a heart attack or something. His hair, see how that hair part goes to the right? Well, the wind was clearly blowing to the right because his hair was flipped over and that the part was all gone and totally out of wind. And he sat down at his desk and he rips open his laptop and he's pounding his fingers there real fast. Like literally within 30 seconds, he had posted on the message board that he was entering an RPM for Frederick Santias. So that is how serious Steven is about this one and how much he believes that Frederick is going to end up a Miami Hurricane. My money's on Steven. I wish the Hard Rock bet app had would put betting lines up for Stephen Wagner's RPM predictions because I feel confident that when he puts one of those RPMs in, that it's probably going to go in that direction. Lots of times I just piggyback and jump on board. I say, all right, if you're in, I'm in. And we double load those RPMs so that when somebody looks up the name in the database, they see Miami at the top, like 80% or, however the algorithm does the math. That's up to the algorithm. But anyway, yeah. So we're feeling really good about Frederick Santias. All right, let's see. Let me next talk about cornerback Kent Dobson. He's from Miami, Norland. He's committed to Miami and was making a lot of drama, over the past few weeks about North Carolina, and drama with a capital D. Okay, we know the whole deal. Bill Belichick's there. What's that girlfriend's name? Hudson. I forget her. With a Jordan Hudson. She's there. We've seen all the social media videos of them walking around after games and, arm in arm and the whole thing, the wedding rumors. Okay. We love the drama at North Carolina. Okay. But now let's cut to the chase. Okay. There's no chance that Bill Belichick is staying at North Carolina long enough to turn around that program. Okay. Their football team is not very good right now. And, we've got Mr. Dobson here from Miami, Norland, and I understand the business side of this whole thing, and how kids leverage different schools to try to drive up their NIL. And Dobson's a very good prospect and very deserving of a competitive NIL deal coming out of high school, which I'm sure he's going to get from Miami. I've never heard, I haven't heard too many people complain that Miami's not fair in the NIL world. Okay. This university is supporting this program to the max. Miami, very competitive in NIL, but they do have a structure. Okay. It is not just throw bags of money at every single situation. You can witness the recruit Derek Cooper, up at Chaminade, the running back. Texas comes in and drops a bag, and Miami says, listen, we're not going there. We're not getting into a bidding war for a kid in high school right now. I mean, we've got Mark Fletcher, we've got Jordan Lyle, we've got downtown Marty Brown, who got screwed the other day at Hard Rock Stadium out of a long touchdown run. That kid's playing unbelievable football right now. You got Gerard Pringle sitting there, just waiting for an opportunity. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey dying for an opportunity. So they're not sitting here playing games with a high school kid that thinks he's worth $1 million. Okay. And that might sometimes cause, they may not get him. Texas needs a running back. All the other running backs on their board dropped off. They badly need a running back. So they say, let's go to South Florida and let's drop a bag on Derek Cooper's lap and let's create a bidding war that maybe we can win. And that's where we're at on that one right now. Miami's not doing that with everybody. Okay. So for the kids like Dobson, he's a very good defensive back prospect. He's from South Florida. It would be great for him to go to the U, have a career. And if he turns out he's a really good player, he's going to get all the money that he could ever want. They take care of their own down in Coral Gables right now. Nobody, you haven't heard one person say they don't. Okay. And the only one that left to go to the transfer portal was Isaiah Horton, who went to Alabama as a wide receiver. I mean, $700,000 NIL deal wasn't good enough for him. He had to go try to get more from Alabama. Okay, I'm sure he's doing. I haven't paid attention. I'm sure he's doing fine at Alabama, whatever. Miami replaced him very capably at receiver with C.J. Daniels, and life goes on. They just got to get JoJo Trader healthy. So anyway, Stephen, I know I just got long-winded there, but talk to us about Dobson and where you think that is right now.
Yeah, so obviously a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of buzz around North Carolina, and I was hearing that it was more or less a done deal. It was expected that he was going to go ahead and flip to UNC. He went ahead and took that official visit to North Carolina last weekend. I think North Carolina played Richmond or someone like that. He had a really good visit. By all accounts, it went really well. I thought that visit was going to. I thought that visit was going to end in a flip. Straight up, I thought that by Monday, by the end of that trip, he would have been a Tar Heel. I can tell you that the vibe in Coral Gables was that they were kind of anticipating he was probably going to flip. Well, Monday comes and he's still committed to the Hurricanes. We catch up with him on Saturday night. He's still committed to Miami, and I can tell you that he's giving this thing a lot of freaking thought. I think that he understands that this is a really, really big decision. It is a big deal if you're going to flip away from the school that you always want to play at in favor of another school. And I think he's thinking to himself, maybe Miami isn't, Miami is the right decision. Maybe we do need to end up sticking with the Hurricanes. I definitely don't think that this is over by any means. I think that both programs are going to continue fighting for him. Right now, Miami and North Carolina are the two schools that are primarily involved. I can confirm that. But right now, I wouldn't say that I totally agree with every single RPM that's in for him to flip to the Tar Heels. I remember whenever I reported on the site that it seemed like he was likely headed to UNC, that I said I wasn't entering an RPM for him to flip to North Carolina because I still thought that there was a chance that he could ultimately end up flipping back to Miami. I mean, keep in mind, this is a kid who grew up a Hurricane fan. He really likes Miami. He wanted to be a Hurricane. He committed to the Hurricanes to become one of their first members of the 2027 class. He really does like Mario Cristobal and Zach Etheridge and Will Harris and Dennis Smith and everyone who's associated in the recruiting department down there. I'm not viewing this as a certain that he's going to North Carolina. In fact, right now, I would probably lean a little bit more toward him sticking with the Hurricanes.
All right. Kent. Well, I mean, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. Whatever. But man, this seems like a hell of an opportunity for you as a rising kid from Miami, Norland. And, I just would like, not just him, but like a lot of these kids get caught up in listen, it's a lot. Okay. It's a lot for these kids and their families. This is obviously unprecedented. Kids coming out of high school, they've never been able to make money like this. Like even when things were illegal, like the dollars were not flowing like they are now. And, it's like, wanting to get the most you can is a great thing. But just you don't want to overplay it, and end up at a shitty North Carolina program that there's no chance that Belichick's turning that thing around before he either goes and retires with Jordan somewhere in the mountains or whatever, or, whatever. He actually lives down here a lot of the year, or whatever, or goes back to the NFL. If somebody from the NFL calls, he's gone. Okay. I don't know if anybody will, but I don't see a long existence for Bill Belichick in North Carolina. I just don't. All right, let's move on from that one. And let's talk a little bit about defensive tackle. You noted how seriously Miami is recruiting the bigs. They're with good reason. It's the hardest position on the field to recruit. Mario Cristobal has built this program from the inside out, and it is working, ladies and gentlemen. We saw the way that they just pummeled the Florida Gators on Saturday night, and same with Notre Dame. And you got Mario walking around the sideline, pound. I mean, you gotta love it. They're building this program in the trenches. Nolan Wilson, defensive tackle. I mean, if he wants to, could be a big part of that. Okay, right now he is committed to Alabama, Stephen, but he was here this weekend to see Miami pound at those Gators. Spoke to him afterwards. Your thoughts on where things stand with Nolan Wilson?
Yeah, Wilson has been one of those guys that we've continued to document. I mean, just all over the site here over the last. It's been I think 2 months, 3 months now since he. Well, actually, no, 3 months. 3 months since he committed to Alabama. He was one of Miami's top targets before he committed. He's still one of Miami's top targets after he committed. Miami has remained kind of confident that, they're going to have, a really good chance to flip Nolan Wilson. I'm not sure that I'm quite as confident as the staff in Coral Gables seems to be. Obviously, it was a really good sign that Miami was able to get him down here for the Florida game, but he straight up told me, man, it's going to be really, really hard for me to flip because once I commit to a school, I'm pretty much committed. He took this visit down here to Miami because over the summer, whenever he committed to Alabama, he made a promise or Damian Lewis, asked him to promise him to make a trip to Miami, to come down here and actually, get here for a game day visit, experience what it's like to be in Miami on a game day. And Nolan Wilson said, okay, I've got a lot of respect for you. I think you're a really good man. You've recruited me. You've recruited me well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you that respect. So he came down, and by all means, he definitely had a very, very good visit. Miami's definitely giving him something to think about. But kind of poking around on him from his side of things, I think I still lean more heavily toward Alabama than I originally anticipated. Previously, I kind of felt like maybe there was a little bit of a vibe trending toward Miami. Now I kind of feel like, now that I have a little bit more of an accurate read on things after having the opportunity to see him in person, I think I do still lean a little bit toward the Crimson Tide to be able to hold on to him here.
Alabama's still a force in recruiting, even though they are struggling, and but Miami will continue chipping away there. We'll see what happens. Another one that I'll put in the category that's just baffling me a lot is wide receiver Calvin Russell from Miami Northwestern. His mom went to Miami. I'm right on that, right, Stephen? His mom went to Miami. His mom went to Miami.
His mother is in the University of Miami Sports Hall of Fame for women's basketball.
Correct. Okay. So, what's the problem? Okay. Calvin Russell is probably, I hope I don't get myself in trouble with anybody saying this, but probably not even the best receiver at Northwestern. I mean, it's tight, right, Steve? Am I right about that, Steven?
I do think Nick Lanier is a very good receiver. I do think Nick Lanier in 2027, who is also a major Miami priority, who I have actually entered an RPM for Miami to land. Nick Lanier is really, really, really special.
Yeah,
and that's not a knock against Calvin Russell.
Not a knock at all, but your mom is in the Hall of Fame. Now I get it. I heard the whispers. Oh, Miami was taking that for granted. Oh, they weren't recruiting him as hard as Syracuse is recruiting him. Come on. It's you can go stay home. Your mom's in the Hall of Fame. You're a big receiver with a lot of potential. The sky is there's great opportunity for Russell at Miami. Why in the world would you be messing around with that? Because they are going to get other guys. Okay, you just see what's going on here. Okay, if Calvin Russell doesn't jump in the boat, they are going to get somebody else at least at his level or better. I feel confident about that. He's got an opportunity. Why is he messing with it by flirting around with Syracuse? Okay, Fran Brown the clown. I'll even throw out there because he's a little bit of a clown. He tries to clown around and get himself on social media and stuff. I mean, why, if you are a Miami kid from Miami Northwestern and you have an opportunity to go play wide receiver at the U, and you're a big, this kid is impressive. He passes the look test for sure. A big kid with a big radius and has a lot of potential if he comes into the right program with the right offense and gets coached well. He has potential to be a good college football receiver. Why would you go wage all that at Syracuse, where it literally gets to below zero sometimes? I know they play their games in the Carrier Dome, but you're not going to be able to hang out in the Carrier Dome all the time up at Syracuse. I just don't understand why you would get so caught up in recruiting to where you would be playing this game, and if it's not a game, then don't play the game. Just say flat, I'm going to Syracuse, and don't make Miami waste their time, looking foolish because your mom's in the Hall of Fame and you're not going to go there. So I wish somebody would advise them, but and just, figure it out, because I don't like what I'm seeing in that recruitment, Stephen. You get the chance to say whether you agree with me or not. But it's not like every local kid is obligated to go to Miami, but this one just makes total sense. I don't understand why it's not happening.
Yeah, Miami's definitely still continuing to work this thing hard. People have asked me, why is Calvin Russell committed to Syracuse? In today's age of NIL and the transfer portal and just kind of everything that's going on with recruiting, we are in an unprecedented waters related to recruiting right now. I do think that some people really do overlook the value of just a player having a really good relationship with a coach, kind of wanting to blaze his own trail, so to speak, and just and a coach just convincing a player, man, come here and play for me. You're really going to enjoy it. I'm going to be able to get the best out of you. I think that Calvin Russell has the closest relationship with Fran Brown. Fran Brown personally recruited him harder for longer than any head coach. He made an all-out effort to get Calvin Russell. I mean, he just straight up recruited the shit out of him. I don't know, excuse my cursing, but I mean, that's basically what happened. He just flat out out recruited everyone else for Calvin Russell. And, at some point, it felt at one point I was hearing Michigan for him. I entered an RPM for him to go to Michigan because I really thought he was going to go to Ann Arbor. Whether or not that was going to stick, I did think he was going to Ann Arbor. We heard LSU at certain points too after he took an official visit to Baton Rouge. But I mean, through thick and thin, I mean, Fran Brown was there. Recruiting the absolute crap out of him. Now, that being said, Miami's also aware that they are going to be in this thing for the long haul. And that they are going to need to treat this like a marathon and not a sprint. They are going to work very, very hard to flip him. And I think probably, if you're looking at the recruiting calendar, Miami's kind of marked that it would make the most sense, to try to be able to get him a little bit closer to signing day. Because if you put everything on the table right now, if you push really hard to get him this exact second and flip him away from Syracuse, well, now you've got to hold on to him for dear life for another 2 months before we actually get to signing day. And that can be challenging. It's definitely a lot easier to flip a player closer to signing day and just have to hold on to him for, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, than it would be to have to hold on to him for 1 or 2 months while all these other schools are making their very aggressive runs at him. But Russell has now visited Miami twice in the first 4 weeks of the year. He hasn't had the chance to make it back up to Syracuse yet. He's come here. The first time he came with a Malachi Tony T-shirt. The second time he came with a Malachi Tony sort of poster cutout. Actually, now that I think about it, it almost sort of looked like one of those fat heads, but with Malachi Tony's full body. Him and Malachi Tony are really, really, really close friends. In fact, I remember whenever Teddy Bridgewater got hired at Northwestern, there were very briefly rumors, is Malachi Tony going to go to Northwestern and team up with his buddy Calvin Russell and go play for Teddy Bridgewater and absolutely create an absolute force and a wrecking ball down there at Miami Northwestern. They've remained very, very tight even after Malachi reclassified. And Miami keeps telling Calvin, "Hey, come down here, see your buddy, see Malachi. Go watch him play. That's your homie. Why wouldn't you want to be up here in the stands for him?" And both times, Calvin's gone into the locker room afterward. He's seen Malachi Tony. He said what's up to him. He celebrated after him. Tells him he's proud of him all the time. Miami's definitely going to keep trying to work that angle. And honestly, man, at this point, it doesn't really matter what the reasoning is for getting a kid to campus or why you're able to get a kid to campus. It just matters that you're able to actually get him to these games. And the fact that Calvin Russell is getting to these Miami games, period, I think is actually the important thing. Screw whatever else he's thinking about. The fact that he is visiting Miami is significant for Miami. I would go so far as to say if he doesn't end up at Syracuse, he's going to end up at Miami. And right now, after him visiting Miami twice in the first 4 weeks of the year, I am starting to feel better about the Hurricanes' position.
Just makes too much sense. I mean, like why mess around, is my opinion. But, it's not like I'm sitting here, I don't want to come across like, oh, every kid has to go to Miami. Every kid should go to Miami. No, that's stupid. That's not the case. There's different situations and stuff. This one makes total sense. If he's going to go back up to Syracuse, he might want to do it soon, though. It's going to start getting pretty damn cold up there. And, I would definitely make that return visit before the end of October for sure. But we'll see what happens there. But anyway, listen, Calvin Russell to me makes a lot of sense for Miami, and we'll see what happens. All right. Another one that to me also makes a lot of sense to Miami. Steven, listen, I know I might as well just put these on, okay? Because I know I'm sounding like the ultimate homer here during the show. But like I'm looking at this, this Justice Fitzpatrick kid at St. Thomas Aquinas. I'm looking at the way Miami's defensive backfield is playing. I'm looking at the way, Etheridge and Harris, the two new coaches, are coaching up these kids, and how every single one of them is a better player today than they were when they started with these two guys. And like, I'm just looking at all this and I'm saying to myself, okay, Justice Fitzpatrick, St. Thomas Aquinas, okay, brother Minka plays for the Miami Dolphins. Mom and dad don't have to get on planes and fly off to one place on Saturday and race back on Sunday to somewhere else to see Minka play. It just makes it all just so seamless. Mario recruited Minka Fitzpatrick to Alabama. There is the built-in family connection. Everything is in place on this one, Stephen, for Justice Fitzpatrick to go to Miami. Why? Is he committed to Georgia? Can they change that?
Well, part of the reason that he's committed to Georgia is because last year Miami's secondary stunk. And who in their right mind would have wanted to, stick around and play for a secondary that's giving up all of these points? That really, really, really hurt Miami last year. And obviously we saw it as we got closer to signing day. Miami lost defensive commits because of how porous the defense was last year. But this year it's been corrected. It's been corrected in a really big way. Corey Heatherman, against the two Power 5 opponents that Miami has faced so far, he's called gems of defensive games. I was just really, really impressed with the way that Heatherman coached Saturday against Florida. You saw their defensive stats. They were of 13 on third down at one point or something like that. They were absolutely locked in on the pass game. They do have a bunch of talented receivers. Lagway, he's had some struggles, but he has proven at points, he can sling it a little bit. But I think the way that Miami's secondary performed, I think that's definitely helping their case. Like you said, Miami is kind of pitching that angle of, hey, man, you got everything right here, really close to home. Why not stick around and, be a Hurricane? And, now we've got the trifecta of Minka here, Justice here, and then his parents here. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't feel like life would make it, or that would make life a lot easier on his parents? Mario, like you said, has maintained a very close relationship to the Fitzpatrick family. I remember the first time that I talked to Justice, I asked him about Mario, like, when was the first time you met him? And Justice said, man, I think I was probably like 7 or 8. And
a young little kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mario's sitting down at the dinner table with Minka, and, here comes, little Justice, just kind of walking into the room, hey, this is our son in elementary school, Justice. And, Justice has remembered him since then. Mario was one of the first coaches to offer him whenever he got here to Miami. Has made a very aggressive effort ever since then. I am growing more confident in the Hurricanes' chances. I do think that there's a chance that Justice could get back to Miami for a third time potentially this fall. But part of the reason he committed to Georgia was because Georgia has been Georgia. They have been an NFL factory for defensive backs under Kirby Smart. They're constantly in the national championship conversation. They're constantly in the playoff. They're constantly playing in big games. And then another part of it that I think is kind of being overlooked is Georgia's in the SEC. And there is an SEC bias for the Fitzpatrick family because Minka played at Alabama. Justice has said before, I grew up watching, Minka play in these big games, the SEC on CBS, watching him, number 1 Alabama, number 2 LSU, these big games on primetime television, and this whole idea that the best players in the country are going to play in the SEC, and the SEC is going to give you the highest level of competition to boost your NFL draft stock as high as it can and get you NFL ready. And right now, Miami's having to battle to kind of overcome that stigma and prove, no, it doesn't matter that Georgia's in the SEC. It doesn't matter that we right now look like we're on the higher end of teams in the ACC. And it looks like that gap between the best teams in the ACC and the worst teams in the ACC is starting to get wider and wider as time goes on.
Yeah. And Minka does have a connection to Kirby Smart.
Minka does have a connection to Kirby Smart as well, because Kirby was his defensive coordinator. But I think that if Miami can continue proving, no, we are legit, we are going to produce really elite defenses, we are going to play at that level that you're demanding to see, I think that Miami's going to have a great chance for justice. Way back in January, I put in kind of a way too early RPM on justice to end up at Miami, just a sort of an aggressive way to call my shot, like a way too early way for me to call my shot. And say that I thought Miami was going to land a really good player. Right now, I still feel kind of decent about that RPM. I think that there's a chance that that RPM could actually end up being right at the end of the day. I mean, Miami does have a lot more room in this class for players, with the scholarship limit jumping up to 105. So it wouldn't surprise me if Miami adds, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 more guys. I don't think that's totally unreasonable to think.
All right. We'll end the Fitzpatrick conversation there. I'm not going to say any more. We'll see what happens. And then I wanted to ask you about this 5-star 2027 edge kid, David Jacobs. I mean, it's obvious he's the top priority for Miami in the 2027 class. How the Canes doing there?
Really well. I really like the position that Miami has put themselves in through the first 4 weeks of the year. He visited for the Notre Dame game. He came back for the Florida game. Man, I mean, like, I think the Canes are really going to be right there for David Jacobs.
That's huge.
I know it's early. I know there is a really, really long way to go. And he's already visited Miami twice this fall. And he said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back for a third time this fall, but I'm definitely going to be back in the spring. He's kind of one of those guys, kind of reminds me of sort of like Zayden Walker's recruitment a couple of years ago. Now, obviously, Walker ended up going to Georgia, and Miami really, really wanted him, and they worked him really hard. But it just kind of in the sense that Miami has emerged as a really, really big threat for a Georgia prospect very early on. This one, we'll see if maybe it can have a little bit of a better outcome for Miami, but I really like the position that Miami has put themselves in so far. Now, obviously, he's a 5-star player. He's a national recruit. He's going to take a crap load of visits this fall. But with the way that Miami's playing, with the way that his 2 visit experiences have gone so far in Coral Gables, it is really, really, really hard not to imagine that Miami is going to be a top contender for quite a while. I do not think enough people really appreciate just how good of a job Miami has done so far this year.
All right, guys, well, that gives you a little bit of a primer today on some things going on in Canes recruiting. There's so much more, and you could stay on the pulse of Miami recruiting by being a subscriber to CaneSport.com. So if you're not yet a subscriber, like I said earlier in the show, hop on over to our site, come on board. I promise you will not be sorry. Our whole team busts it really hard every single day to take care of you guys. So come on over to CaneSport.com. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for joining us today on Inside Canes Recruiting, and we'll see you next time, everybody.